Hello and welcome everybody to episode 5 of The Faithful and the Questioner. My name is Max. I'm joined here again with Sammy. Sam, we're really on episode 5 already?
I know, it was crazy.
It's a little crazy. Well, it's been a couple months, I guess. So
we've been consistent. I'm proud of us.
Yes, it will be good.
With a random idea on a late night drive, and here we are.
Yes, I do remember that. That was fun. So today's subject, you're going to take me to church.
Really?
Well, no, not literally.
Aw.
Yeah, why would I want to go to... Okay, well, maybe that's your job. See if you can convince me to go to church by the end of this episode.
Okay.
So I do my best to be respectful and open-minded when it comes to religions, specifically on the topic of Christianity, growing up in that kind of family. Church is something that I remain highly skeptical of. I don't mind people going to it, but well, one, it's pretty boring in my opinion. I feel like I got better things to do on Sunday afternoon. But two, I don't fully understand the purpose. It just seems like there's a lot of manipulation to get you to go. And I'll start off with one example. I know we've talked about this before. I think it came up in one of the earlier episodes we did, but something that you told me about when we were younger is you went to church, and I think it was a Catholic church. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the priest basically said, if you don't go to church often enough, you're going to go to hell. And that's the kind of thing that pisses me off and makes me want to go even less, because it sounds like a threat.
Agreed.
Any thoughts on that? I mean, beyond that, I think you believe now that that is incorrect. But that's one thing that bothers me immensely.
I do believe that the way that he said that was incorrect. And it does seem like a threat. And the often enough, makes you kind of wonder, okay, where's the line? Is 5 times a year the minimum that I can do? It's not necessarily, what's the least that I can do to get by and be right in the eyes of God? But I see where he's coming from, that to separate a Christian and the church is kind of impossible. The church is not just a building that you go to. It's something that you are innately a part of as a Christian. You often hear of the church, there's a church building, or, turn right when you see the church, or stuff like that. But the church, as it's referred to in the Bible, the word used for it more refers to an assembly of people. And we've kind of come to think of it as a building that we go to consume something and then we leave, rather than a congregation that we're a part of. And so it's not I attend a church, I go to a Sunday service, and I become a Christian. Sometimes that happens, but I think the order is more of you become a Christian, and then that compels you to go to church. So as a non-Christian, I don't blame you for not going to church. But if you were to become a Christian and want to know God, want to be surrounded by other Christians, want to grow more into the image that you were created in, then I would strongly encourage you, if not compel you, or I feel like it's a natural thing that happens when you become a Christian, is the desire to be a part of that group of other Christians, i.e. the church. So kind of switching the mindset of church is something we go to on a Sunday. I go in, I'm there for an hour, I sing along to some songs, I hear a message, and then I leave. And more of hey, this is my community, and we're kind of an army of people growing together. And sometimes our meetings just so happen to look like a Sunday morning, but that's not the whole thing. That's just our regularly scheduled programming.
Okay. And what's the difference? Because we talked about, in I think our first episode, kind of your background. You changed from Catholicism to Christianity. Can you kind of give a brief rundown of the differences between the Catholic Church and the Christian Church? Both physical and the community element that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I want to not diss the Catholic Church too much, because my experience was pretty minimal. But based on my minimal experience, I wasn't super involved in Catholic Church. I just went. So I went to Mass, and there's the singing, and there's a message that I usually zoned out during, and then there's Mass, so the communion aspect of it that happens every time. But usually I was just kind of zoned out, and I never was really involved in like a smaller group or like a Sunday school or something on a smaller scale. I only went to the big meetings and then went in and left, kind of consuming it but not being involved in it type of way. And then now it's totally different. Like going to church, yeah, I go to church most Sundays, but my church is more like, I think of it more as like a family, and I go there not just on Sundays, but there's small groups or there's different volunteer opportunities that you can take advantage of, and you're in group chats with people, and people are like praying for you or putting in requests, or meal trains getting set up so you can take care of people in the church. Like it's more of a family and more of, yeah, you go there on Sunday, but it's not like that's the only time that you see or talk to people or care about them.
So I like that. I mean, I appreciate the community elements of a lot of things like that. And I don't want to stray too off topic immediately, but I think I got you to watch that that gambling movie a few months ago, right? The Holy Rollers. It's a movie about card counting Christians. And you see them on video, and it's this big group of people who have become close friends to the point that they're almost family. Mm-hmm. That's kind of cool, and if you go there for that, that's great. I just don't necessarily think it has to be done through a church. I mean, you can find community by going to the gym or playing a sport or anything like that. So what incentive is there to actually go and show up every week?
Well, first off, I want to respond to what you said and agree that, yeah, there are lots of ways to find community. And if you go to the gym or if you're part of a sports team or something, you're making friends out of a common interest. And that's great, and you should do that. But as a Christian, like your greatest interest and leading thing in your life is your faith. And so why not go be a part of something that shares that common interest? And it's easy. There's tons of them. It's called the church, or it's called local churches, or it's called a parachurch organization, for example, which we can talk more about. But a parachurch organization is like, for example, in undergrad, I was involved in the Navigators. That's a parachurch organization. It's not like a building. It doesn't have the same organizational structure as a church, but it is a gathering of Christians. So in my head, that at least mostly matches the entire definition of a church. But to go back to your question, like what's the incentive of coming on a Sunday? I think community is a huge part. And within community, there's like accountability and being known. So as you're growing in your faith, like the accountability to be challenged and be teachable and to learn and to hear from people from different parts of life, maybe people that are older than you. You can get advice in your walk with Jesus. You can get advice in your life in general, and just people to go through life with you and celebrate with you. Another reason is that teaching aspect. So like if I want to learn more about something, I would probably take a class or attend a lecture or do something to learn more about that topic. And that is what at least modern day churches, how they typically function, is there's some sort of message that you listen to and learn from and think about and grow in. And then your church is all doing it together. So it's not just you trying to figure that out by yourself, but you're doing it alongside dozens or hundreds or however many people. And then worship is another aspect of church. So just to give you a glimpse into a typical church service at like my church in Fort Collins, for example, is you show up, you chat with people, church starts, you have a few worship songs, you all sing together. There's a message, there's announcements, there's a message, and then sometimes there's like closing worship. So just another incentive is, as Christians, like our lives, our worship to God, worship isn't just like singing, but it is an opportunity for us to like get together. It's called like corporate worship, like all together congregationally worshiping, which probably doesn't make that much sense to somebody not in the church, but I think there's definitely value in that. So many different reasons. I think church can be viewed two different ways. One is like as an evangelism tool, and two as equipping current Christians. So evangelizing to the lost or equipping the saints, and some kind of lean more one way or the other. But I think the equipping the saints, quote unquote, is kind of the purpose of the church. Is it's like a gathering of people as a launching pad to go out and be the hands and feet of Jesus. And that involves worship, that involves like training, that involves accountability. It's kind of like a boot camp for a Jesus army. You don't like that, do you?
Well, only because of the specific phrasing you just used, you made it sound a little culty. But
okay, that's fair.
You're building an army. Okay, but
that's kind of
so let's say, I mean, when you're saying if you're a Christian, you're a part of a church, I mean, is there any Christian that's not, well, I feel like I'm giving myself the answer for this thinking about it now, but when you could be a Christian without being in a church, right?
Yeah, I was saying like, as a Christian, you are part of the church, and the church is like the global community, I guess, of believers that surpasses countries and languages and buildings. Like, it's just like, if you're a Christian, that is the church. The church is all the Christians in the world. And that kind of
gives if I found Jesus tonight and said, yes, I am now a Christian, then I am part of the church.
Yeah.
Without having to set foot in a big building with a bunch of crosses.
Yeah. And then the distinction between like the church, a collection of all believers, and then the local church is that's just kind of a slice of, and typically we talk about it like the capital C church is the church, the collection of all believers, and then the lowercase church is like your local church that you go to. That's a collection of your local believers. And that's where you can engage and learn and teach and serve and do all that stuff in a more practical way, because you can't like engage